Welcome back to part 2 of the Web Development Fundamentals with Astro Clare Technology. I'm happy to see that you're still following along. If you are returning from the previous video, go ahead and open up that live server, open up Visual Studio Code, and let's get started. You may have noticed something new on my documents over here in my Explorer section, is that I created a images folder with this here. So I just went ahead and typed in images by selecting the add folder button here, or new folder button. It just opens that up. And then also I have a avatar web page open as well from avatarmaker.com. Not a sponsor, but they have a great tool to use. And on here, I've already downloaded and created this avatar, but if you want, you can go and make a new avatar, however you please and want to make it. And once you click download, you'll see that you can set the pixelage that you want to have for your image. So once you get that set up and placed inside of a folder, inside of the folder that you're making your website out of, go ahead and continue to follow along. So in our previous videos, we learned how to set up our header, our navigation menu, our footer, learned the difference in our CSS documentation, how to properly do some CSS styling. Next, we're going to work on our section here, our section element that have our aside and our main elements inside of it. So let's go ahead and start working on our aside element here, and we're going to begin by creating a div container with a class name of aside container. So when we're working with classes and IDs inside of HTML, there's two ways that we can do this. We can do this by simply typing out div, and then we can go back a space, and then we can add the class aside container, or we could do something even easier, and we can just do a period, and then we can do aside container. Now, if you see here in this abbreviation, it literally has the div element with the class name inside of it. Go ahead and push enter. And then you simply do the same for your ID, and you give it the same name. For now, we're not going to use ID. That's going to be later when we get started in JavaScript, and we'll have a specific element used for that we'll use a button for. So go ahead and open this up a little bit, and you're going to learn how to add an image into your web page here. So let's go ahead and add a image element with img, and go ahead and just push enter. And as you see, we have the source of our image, which is going to be the file path right here. So we can copy the path from our image. If you go click that down arrow, you click copy path, you can literally go ahead and paste that in there. And I'm going to just go and use image and then avatar and click save, and you'll see that that is showing there. And your alt here is pretty much saying what is the alternate text needed if the image doesn't load. So we'll say this is an image of me. All right, then do a period, and we'll save it. So you don't see that text in there, but if we remove this link here, then you can see this is an image of me, and that's because that image isn't there, or it didn't properly load if that was the case. So go ahead and add that in there, and we're going to learn how to style this image a little bit. So to begin, let's focus on our section element first before we get into that image. So focus on our section element, and of course you know how to go and style your section. First, we're going to start with a height of 80 view height, because remember, we use 5 view height for the footer, 5 view height for the navigation, and then 10 view height for the header, which gives us 20 view height taken away from our complete total 100 view height in the body. Next, we're going to set our display to flex. I'm going to save that. Obviously, you're not seeing too much happen, and we know why. Now we're going to go and we're going to call out our aside element, and we're going to set the flex property to 40 20. I'm sorry, not 40. We're going to set it to 20. And then we're going to set our main element to a flex of 80. If I can type. If we didn't do such, I'll show you here. If we change the background color to, we'll do green, right? Let's say we remove the flex styling from our main. It's going to spread across the whole page. So we want to make sure we set that flex styling, because other words, it won't properly assign the opposite element with the proper flex value. So let's go ahead and change the background color. I'm going to start off with a color white, but we're just going to go just a little bit down just to get it a little bit off line with the regular white color over here. Next, we're going to start styling our class container, or our div container, with the class aside container here. So the way that we do that is the same exact way that we created the div container itself, and that's by initiating the period and then typing out the name of the class name itself, which would be aside container. So put your curly brackets there and hover over this for a minute, and you will see that pretty much this CSS rule is saying whatever element has the class aside container, all that styling is going to be applied to that. So we can have multiple things with the class name aside container. So whatever we do to this container, that will change inside of this as well. Obviously we don't want that, so I'm going to delete that, but that just gives you an example, and we'll work with that a little later. So with our aside container, we want to set the height to 80 view height, and then we want to set the display, or not our display, we want to set our height to 80 view height. We want to set our aside element to display flex. I apologize. And we'll leave that like that. We'll set the height here to 80 view height, and then we can focus on some styling in a few. Next, we want to get our class aside container class, the image of it. The reason why we're going to do the aside container and then image is because if we try to just do the image alone and give it some styling, that's going to go for everything that has the image element. So if we add more images in our regular main section, it's actually going to change the styling of that image in our aside container and our main container. Whereas if we only initiate for the aside container, it's only going to change the styling for that, or whatever's in that container. So let's go ahead and change the height of this image to 100 pixels, and then I'm actually going to do 200 pixels to make it just a tad bit bigger. We're going to justify the content in our regular container to center, and we're going to justify the content here to center for our aside element and our assigned container, or aside container. We've changed the height of our aside container image to 200 pixels. Now let's change the border radius to 180 pixels, or 180 pixels. And then if you notice, it looks like this is touching that border up there. Let's go ahead and add some padding to our aside container. And we're going to do that by saying padding, and then we're going to say 50 pixels. We'll add 50 pixels. And for our image, I want to give it a little bit of, I guess, some texture. A little bit. I want to say, make it have a little bit of life to it. We're going to add a shadow to the image, and that shadow is going to follow the same border radius that we have. So let's go to box shadow, and what we want is, we don't want it to move left or right or up and down to where it's uneven. We want it to stay pretty even. So for our x-axis, we're going to put 0 pixels. For our y-axis, we're going to put 0 pixels. But for the spread, or the depth of the shadow itself, we're going to put 10 pixels, and we're going to use that same dark sea green that I use. If you use a different color, go ahead and use whatever color you choose. Click save, and you'll see you got this little small shadow right there. So I'm going to go ahead and add 50 pixels to make it stand out a little more. And you see we got this really cool shadow right there. Of course, you can always go and change the color to make it stand out more, and as bright as you want or as dark as you want. It's really up to you. I just want to make sure that you understand how to use that element itself. So I want to leave it about right there, have it stand out. So now we've done some styling in our aside column. Now we're just going to add a few more elements to that column. Next, we're going to add something called a HR, which is a horizontal line. I like to use horizontal lines to just cause a break in styling when I am shifting the direction of information. So obviously the image is just a quick avatar image just to show who we are. I'm going to add an HR to drop in that horizontal line as you see there. And then I'm going to add another div container or a socials container, because now we want people to be able to click our LinkedIn page or click our YouTube page or Facebook page, whatever you decide to add in there. So what I'm going to do is make a container. I'm going to call it socials. Push enter, and now we have a class called socials and a div container that follows that class property. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to add 3 links, and that's going to be just as we did before, 3 with the asterisk, and then got ahead of myself. I'm going to go there. Now we see that they didn't align how we normally would like them to align. So just go through, push enter real quick, and remember to change those HTTP tags or links to hashtags, so that way it doesn't refresh the page unneededly. I guess that's the right word. So in our socials, we're going to change some styling here, right? One thing we want is we want to have these stacked on top of each other and not next to each other. And what I'm going to do for that is a grid, and we'll use a grid for a form as well when we get ready to create forms, and I'll show you guys how we can do that. So let's go ahead and style our socials box here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is obviously call the class name itself. I'm going to do a background color just to see what I'm working with here. I'm going to change it to aqua, and we are going to change the height to 15 view height, and that's because I want to set each of those links to 5 view height a piece. Since it's 3, I'll just do 5 view height. Next, I'm going to set the display to grid so they can stack on top of each other, and then we can also use the same property of like align an item to the center and justifying content to the center. Have them just like that. So next, what do we want to do? We want to take our div class of socials and go for the a link. So how can we do that? We can go to socials and we can do a for the link, and then we can change the background properties of these to something a little more darker or something of the nature, So I'm going to go with that color there just because. I'm going to change the color of the text to white for now, just because of the nature of the color of the background. I'm going to take the text decoration off, pretty much some of the same stuff we did in our navigation menu, and I'm going to do a text transform of uppercase, just my personal preference. You do as you please. And then I'm going to do the width of these to inherit. So actually, nope. We're going to do the width at 300 pixels. Maybe not 200 pixels. And then we'll do a text align center to align our text in the center. We're going to change the height to 5 view height. And that's going to take up that full 15 view height that we have with the socials. But we're also going to align items in the center. We're going to justify content in the center. And then, of course, you guessed it, change the display to flex so we can align that in the center. Another thing that we're going to also add is a margin. So that way we can have a little bit of space in between here. So normally what we would want to do is change this to the same way we would have the link and a reference, but I want to also show you guys how to properly style a link itself. So we can change the margin to about 2 pixels right there, and actually we can turn that height down on those as well to about there. And we can probably change the width to about 100 pixels, and we can remove the background color from our socials tab. So with that being said and done, actually, you know what, let's go make this just a little bit wider, just like that. With that being said and done, we are going to add some real text inside of these social links. So I'm going to start off with LinkedIn. I'm going to start the second one with our YouTube page, and I'm going to do this one for Facebook, right? So I'm just going to save those just like that, and we're going to just add some different types of styling here. So I'm going to kind of stick with that dark sea greenish area and do some letter spacing. So right now what we're doing, we're just styling our elements here, our link elements, and that's just going to help us to follow a certain type of path with how we want our design to look and to get you familiar with styling alone. So do that little letter spacing or margin, however you please to do it. Go ahead and do that, and then we're going to do a quick little trick as we did earlier with the hover attribute. So what we're going to do is when we hover, we want the color to be dark sea green, but we want the background to be, we could do white. I think white will work on that background. So now we have that there when it hovers, similar to what we did with our links above. And since those links don't have an actual link to them yet, they're not going to do anything, but once we get situated, we'll definitely see those links work as they should. And always do not forget to put your target blank, so that way it will go to another tab and not refresh your web page, which can cause difficulty in trying to get back to your page, or an unnecessary step, I should say. So we have this styled. We have our image in here styled. We have our links here for that. And then what we can also add is another link here where we can have I guess we can do a button, and we can do link, and then of course we'll do this. But what we're also going to do is make this a download, right? And then we'll do downloadable inside of there, and we'll just name this resume. So now we have resume right here. Well, let's go ahead and style our button, and let's give this a class name of resume. I'm going to save it, and we're going to go right under here underneath socials, and we're going to call that class resume out so we can style our resume button. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's look at some of the uniqueness of our web page and make a connection here with our button itself. Well, let's change some of the padding on there. I'm just going to do 20 pixels, and what we're going to do here is style some of the button on the padding side in a different way. So one thing to remember is when you're styling padding, it goes top, right, bottom, and left. That's for padding and margin. There are other properties that you can use that have, or not other properties, but there are other styling attributes that you can use that follow the same pattern. But for now, we're just going to focus on the margin and padding of it. So for the top, I'm going to do 10 pixels. Then for the right, 20 pixels. Same thing for the bottom, 10 pixels. And then for the left, 20 pixels. I'm going to style it like that. I'm going to see if we can change some of the width to 200 pixels and make it a little bit bigger like that. And we are going to take off the border. And we're going to say border none. So when you see, the border is going to erase itself. We're going to change the background color. And I don't really want a dark sea green. I might go with something that sticks out a little bit more for green. I'm just going to play around with a couple colors here and see what I can find. I'll do dark olive green, but I'm going to make it a little softer, or a little more soft, I should say. Okay, we'll do that, and then I'll change the color to a bisque. Oh, and that's an error on my end because we are not styling the link itself. So what we're going to do is take that class, that resume, right? Because this is pretty much saying the same as button and then link, but we're styling the resume specific here. So we're going to do resume, the link, and then we're going to change the color to that bisque color that I was going for. And then we're going to do text decoration none. I'm going to remove that. And obviously now I'm going to see that, I want to change it a little bit, make it look a little different. And I'm going to add a little bit of margin to the top of my resume. So if you haven't read the book yet on HTML fundamentals from Astro Clare Technology, our CSS and HTML dives into our margin and padding properties. And pretty much padding is going to be anything that's inside of the element itself, and your margin is going to be anything on the outside. So when we look at margin top, and we do 10 pixels, watch what happens. It moves 10 pixels down pretty much. If we remove that and we focus on our padding and we do 60 pixels just as an example, you see it stays in the same area, but the inside of it has dropped an additional 50 pixels. So we're going to save that, and then we're going to go back and we're going to add a margin of top. And if you wanted to, you can always do margin 10 pixels and then set all other values and properties to 10, and that would do the same exact thing. Or 10 pixels, I apologize. So now you have a working link section over here, and to download a resume, obviously we will need to add the documentation for that and provide the links for the information here as well. And then we will have more information over here to also justify and support that. So I think I just opened up the wrong thing. Yep. So with that, we can also add more information down here that could be maybe a Facebook or LinkedIn post that we want people to focus on. In the meantime, I'm just going to add filler information in there just to show you, and we can do a class of post, and I'm going to show you how we can style a div container without having information inside of it. So we'll go right underneath resume since that's our last element, and notice that everything that we style falls in line. So we styled our section first, we did our aside first, but then we went to our aside container, then we went to our socials, everything in between, then we went to our resume, and now we're going to post. That's literally following the same exact layout, and that's going to cause for really neat code. So as I was saying, we're going to go ahead and style our post information here, or container here. We're going to do the class name post with the period, of course, our curly brackets, and then we're just going to set it to a height of I'm just guesstimating here because I'm not really sure how many pixels it is, but I'm going to do a height of 400 pixels, which I'm already seeing that that's too much. So I'm going to do a height of 300 pixels, which seems to be just right, and then a height or a width of 300 pixels as well. And then I can see that that is also too much. So we're going to do 200 pixels and then add a background color. And that's why I like to use background color a lot, to see exactly where I'm at. So I'm seeing there that we obviously have a little bit of space and it's overlapping a little bit. So we're going to do 200 pixels and then a height of 200 pixels or 250 pixels. And what we can also do is add a margin to the top and do before as we did, and add, I'm just going to add 20 pixels of margin. And what I'm going to do is make this just a little bit darker. And I'll just add some text in here with one of our headings. So pick a heading of your choice. I'm going to go with H4, and I'm just going to say, this is where I will add a post from one of my social media accounts that is relevant to my portfolio. And I'll just do save. And if we want to make it even more prettier and more aligned how everything is, we'll do a display flex, we'll do justify content center, and we'll do align items center, and then we'll do a text align center. So we could do just like that, and that's just some filler information there. And then obviously if you want, you can just go ahead and make it uniform with the rest of your web page, right? So I'm just going to play around with some colors here, and I think that'll work. So now for our main section, there's going to be a ton of information that you can add into your main section, and it will play a big role in exactly what you are trying to do as a developer, and your goal as to why you're creating a portfolio. Before we move forward with our main section, I do want to show you something that is really cool, and then something that I wanted to skip at first until we came back to this information, and that is the title, right? So in your title, just change it to portfolio and save it, and obviously you can just change it to your name as well. So change it to portfolio, or your name and portfolio, whatever you want to do for your training and exercise purposes. I'm just going to change it to Astro Clare Technology. But what we also are going to do is a link and favicon. And the reason why we're going to do a favicon is because we want our image to show up here instead of this basic World Wide Web logo. So what do? We go images, and we pick our avatar, and we click save, and now it's up there. Obviously you want to create something that can stand out a little bit more, but you get the gist of what's happening there. So let's go and copy this line, and what we're going to do is change this here. What's really cool is you can create a web page like this, get it online, and you can essentially create a web app based off of this. And when you add it to the home page, especially with the iPhone and Mac OS platforms, if you don't add this code here, the Apple touch icon, when you go to save, it's just going to save a random letter that's inside the title pretty much, and generally it'll be the first letter. When you add the Apple Touch icon, this image right here that you chose for your favicon, or in our case our avatar, that is going to show for the Apple Touch icon. So when people go to save your website to their homepage, they'll actually see your logo instead of just seeing a random humongous letter in place of it, which is really cool. So that's something that I wanted to kind of save and show you guys before we decided to move even further. Now, with that being said, we've styled a little bit, literally a little bit of our main section styling. And the biggest part of our main section styling is about what we exactly want to show inside of our main section, right? Do you want work cards? Do you want people to just read a big paragraph about you? So many things to choose from, and that's what we're going to focus on in our next video. and we are going to dive into our main section and look at a way where we can add some JavaScript into our page. So with that being said, we're looking forward to seeing you for Web Development Fundamentals Part 3. Hope you guys are still following along and you're learning a lot of information. See you in video number 3.